Rolf?
Get out your saw.
I think for me, there's a point at which there's absolutely a point at which I have my own. Well, here's the thing. I come to a film and I think, from what I've heard of the film, I think it's going to be this. I go, oh, good. I'm looking forward to doing, a big orchestra, for example, a big orchestra. You go, oh, good. It's been a while. I'm looking forward to doing a big orchestra. Turns out it's not a big orchestra at all. So all this momentum I'd had in my own enthusiasm of going, okay, I'm going to be doing this. It's going to be gorgeous. Everyone's going to be so impressed. And then the director, whatever emerges from looking at the film and talking to the director, the needs are very, very different. And if letting go of ego is the point at which the only thing is creativity, and that all agenda has disappeared, and that all that's left is just the energy and the enthusiasm to be creative, then I think that's absolutely something I've experienced numerous times. That, and if that is letting, if that is what putting the ego aside is, then it's dropping any kind of personal agenda and letting the film and the needs of the film and the needs of the director take over, then absolutely that's what happens. And there's been any number of times when I've been kind of dismayed at how boring I think the music I'm being asked to do in one cue is. It's so, it's like a tone with a few piano notes on top of it. And I think it's boring right up to the point at which I realized that by being encouraged in that direction, by being persuaded to that direction by the director, that I've suddenly realized that I've actually created something so much more soulful and connective and resonant than I would have if I'd been left to my own devices. I might have overcomposed or filled it up, but because I was listening and because the director was directing, was encouraging me and supporting a vision, comes a point when it's possible to do that thing where you're not even sure that you trust that this is the right thing to do, but you know that this is what's being asked of you, and suddenly it's way better than anything I would have come up with without that support and that direction. So if that's what putting the ego aside is about and involves, then it's really powerful and very creative. It seems to me that question would really apply to people who are very comfortable in creating their own music. They, having a record deal. I mean, I have some friends who've had with record deals, and they come to film scoring much later, and been stunned and bewildered by the fact that music they've written has been thrown out, or just not quite what we're looking for, and they went, it took us a week to write that. You can't just throw it away. But in fact, that's, the music does not come first. The film, the narrative, the storytelling, the creativity of collaboration is what comes first.
Here's a question that often gets asked composers. And again, it's a free-for-all. Do you worry about your score sounding dated in the future when choosing instruments? Is that a consideration? I know that this was asked of Jerry Goldsmith, and Jerry said, what score doesn't sound dated? He wasn't too concerned about it. But is this anything you really have to worry about or consider?
I don't worry about it. I mean, I think I feel better when I go back and listen to scores that don't sound dated. I feel like it's probably a better choice because it gives the film a longer life. It makes the film more resonant for a bigger audience for a longer stretch of time.
I wonder if that's actually true. We did in fact, I was part of it. John Burlingame moderated a panel a couple of weeks ago about Miklos Rocha. And so we were watching Miklos Rocha. Now his music sounds very dated, but it doesn't take, it's really part of the enjoyment of the film. And
obviously, I don't consider that sounding dated. I guess that's a different.
Well, perhaps
concept.
You don't sound dated in the same way.
No, when you say dated, to me, it's a genre that's very specific to a time, and it's like hip for that particular time, and everybody wants it there now, and 2 years later, you all just hate it.
Yeah.
That's what I was referring to. I think there are genres which rise above that, and those are the genres I tend towards because I think they're stronger just in general, more emotional, more communicative.
you tend also to go for movies that are not generalized pictures. That is, that they're not the huge, I mean, not that you haven't done them, but the large studio films seem to not have as much interest. I mean, I know that you will do them and you do them well, but that, you know, when you're restricted, you can really come up with something very creative on a meaningful drama. Mychael, do you have?
I think what sounds dated is just bad decisions or choices made because for superficial reasons, because this is the instrument of the moment, say a Duduk or something, and that everyone puts into their score without any concept holding it up, without a reason for it to be there, without some kind of thought behind it. That will sound dated, in my opinion. But if you've got the underpinning of a well thought out plan and concept, you know, then I don't think it will.
You said, I'd read in one of your interviews that it was the Nativity. That one of the problems on the Nativity was that it was a genre which had been plumbed well before by Hollywood, and that a lot of Middle Eastern films have a sound that's very, very similar, and that but that in fact there's no music of the time to tell us what the music actually was. There are a few instruments that we know about, and that's about it. When you're constructing a score like that, it would seem to me you'd have a double problem of feeling dated. That is, to do the Hollywood version of the time, as well as to do a score that could just be badly conceived using popular instruments that may be exotic for a few moments. So do you find yourself doing a lot of research, immersing yourself in styles so that it's as authentic as you can get it?
Well, I think that's the first stage, is to do as much research as you can and to dive into that time and place and understand it. Now, whether you use that or not is a whole other question, and you may go past that. That in a way is kind of the obvious place to go, and I think it's the right place to start. It's like doing research for anything. But once you get there, you may find that, you know, I did that for Nativity. I did a lot of research on what the music of that time was, and I got kind of sucked into that whirlpool for a while. But then eventually it was like, well, that's not what I want to do anyway, because we already see that on the screen. So, you know, so then the concept I did was more what that story meant, you know, to a different time, so not in that time. Mm-hmm. But if you know the research, if you've done the research and you know what that level is, then you can make intelligent choices about the next levels.
Rolf, how do you feel about that? Your work sounding dated. Do you care?
Well, some of it's deliberately dated. I mean, you know, although it's curious how that stands up. I mean, like, you know, George S. Clinton's theme to Austin Powers is, you know, deliberately, you know, 60s. Quite how that'll be regarded in 40 years' time, I don't know. And I don't suppose he cares. I think my own feeling is that if you've done something as honest and as communicative as you can, then it'll either turn out to be a timeless, immortal classic, of which we're all 4 responsible for very many, or it'll date with the film, which is actually perfect, isn't it? You know, that a film from way back in the 2000s looks like and sounds like a film from the 2000s, and thank God we don't make films like those anymore, you know. But that's what we belong to. True. I mean, it's interesting. The first time I ever thought about it, I was thinking about the James Bond theme. And I was thinking, you can't write the James Bond theme now because it only belongs to 1963. However, it's a timeless, immortal classic, and it consists of basically 3 notes. But nonetheless, it's, you know, it defies, you know, repetition. Certainly, it's and how do you come up with that? How do you come up with something in the 1963 that is going to last, you know, 50 years? It's impossible to answer. So you might as well just do what's appropriate and culturally, you know, do what communicates with you.
Isn't it infuriating to hear a great idea that's so simple you know you could have written it but didn't? Drives me nuts. Mychael,